Netanyahu doesn't want to listen, which is extraordinary. He doesn't feel the need to listen to an American president.
I'm back to the clock. Which reminds me, I remember when we were in Afghanistan, the big saying was, this is credited to the Taliban, you've got the watches, but we've got the time. Which was, there's so much in that sentence. So, it's really complicated and also sensitive. Hamas has always worked. We've moved on, yeah? We've moved.
Let's move on. We could keep talking on the other thing for the next 2 days.
Hamas has always priced in how many thousands of civilians it will get killed.
Yeah.
Whenever it does something in Israel, it knows, all right, we've managed to kill 20 Jews. We know there's going to be 2,000 civilians die, but it's worth it. They price it in every time because it happens every single time. They know it's going to happen. They do that knowing that that will happen. You cannot argue against that. In fact, I was once talking to a senior Hamas commander. I was in his car driving through Gaza, and I kept looking up to see if there was a drone. But it was a very calm time. And he said to me, you just don't understand us because you're Western. We will sacrifice the youth of every generation for 100 years because we know that within that time we will win and all this sacrifice will be worth it. So they will sacrifice every generation. They believe it's worth it because they don't think the same way. So they've factored it in. But I do believe that the leadership, even in Qatar, but certainly in Gaza itself, Sinwar, the military commander, is a very good example, despite... It's a funny thing about Sinwar. He was in an Israeli hospital 15 years ago, and they cured his cancer and put him back together and shunted him back only for him to lead this massacre. But I don't think he's a very sophisticated character. So what he didn't factor in is that if they do to the level that they did on October 7th, it's not just 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 2,000, 8,000 dead. I don't think he realized that the scale of what happened, that the scale of what came back at them, and I'm not justifying one way or the other, I'm just explaining some of the rationales. If you're going to have the greatest slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust, do you really think... This is what I mean, he's not sophisticated enough to understand. So first of all he thinks, well, they'll all be over in a month. No, it won't.
So they've overplayed their hand.
Oh, enormously. Secondly, do you really think Hezbollah are going to burn all their 150,000 rockets for you? Because the safety net for Iran is 150,000 Hezbollah rockets, which they paid for, in Lebanon. I'm not saying Israel is about to attack Iran, but if it did, those 150,000 rockets would come into Israel. And these are guided missiles, some of them, they're proper missiles. So that's their safety net. They're not going to burn them for Hamas. So this complete lack of understanding of the wider dynamics. And then this brings me to time. So if you think it's going to be over in a month and you're going to lose 1,000 of your men and 8,000 civilians, but you haven't factored in that this time, the clock that begins to tick from the day of the first Israeli action, and you never know how long. Is it going to be 3 weeks before the Americans say, stop? 6 weeks? That's what is usually somewhere between those two dates. No, that's a different clock. Don't you understand? We're not on that clock anymore. 4 months down the road, I think, and prove me wrong within 6 weeks, I think that we're now within about 6 weeks of it ending.
But what does ending even mean?
Well, all right. 6 weeks to the end of major combat operations. We can come back to the day after later. Which brings me to sorry, it's a very long answer, but it's
they're complicated issues.
It's a very, it brings me to the US resolution that is now being drafted at the UN. Up until now, the Americans have never put the word ceasefire in a resolution. They've had 2 resolutions go through, they vetoed some others, but the word ceasefire wasn't in it. This time, the week after Biden said, you've gone over the top, which, if you're on one side of this argument, that's weak language. If you're on the other side of the argument, the Israeli and American, that's actually quite tough, strong public language.
Especially from a president who has
it has weight. It's a signal. Yeah. And putting the word ceasefire, this draft isn't in blue yet. When a resolution goes into blue, it's almost in its final iteration before it goes to a vote. So it's not in blue yet, so it's still being drafted. The American resolution uses the word ceasefire for the first time. That is a huge warning sign to the Americans. That's what it means. It does say ceasefire as soon as it's practical and all the hostages are released. So, there's still a lot of wiggle room there. But they've moved. And that, to me, is the signal that... Last bit of this argument before we go to the day after. Rafah. Israel has destroyed 18 of the 26 Hamas brigades. There's about 1,500 in each brigade. So there's still 8,000, 9,000 fighters crammed into Rafah. Most of the leadership will be there. Most of the surviving hostages will be there. And they've got 2 weeks until Ramadan, March the 11th, the 10th, because the Israelis have said that's the deadline. The Americans have told them, can you please get your plan in order, how to get people out of the way? And we could talk about that, the topography of, it's flat land, there's scrubland, there's Egypt border, there's Rafah at the end of it. Go a kilometre down towards the sea and then up the road and you come to scrubland. You could get some people in there. Had some lovely water parks in Gaza. There's a water park just up the road which has some high-end hotels and restaurants and things in it, which again could be used. There's a way of doing it, and they'll screen all the men coming out. They have face recognition. They have dogs to sniff for traces of explosives. They have all sorts of that, which means that most of the Hamas guys are going to have to stay put. If this happens, in they go. And most of the buildings in Rafah are not bigger than 5 stories high, whereas in Gaza and Khan Yunis,
lots of high-rise.
Yeah, multiple tower blocks. Incredibly dangerous because there's a line of sight of snipers, means that you're going very slowly. And then when you get in, checking every single floor, it takes forever. So this will be quicker. So I think if they go in, they might not, if they go in a couple of weeks, it'll take 4, 5, 6 weeks, and at that point, major combat